One, two, three. This is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and we're back. Here's where we learn how to love yourself, others, and a higher nature. I'm an author, psychologist, and speaker. And every week we bring you fascinating aspects about how to improve your life, your relationships, your self-esteem. And we've been having some really amazing guests over the course of the summer and now in the fall. And we have one today that I'm really very excited to talk to. This is Dr. John Tamiazzo, who holds a PhD in transpersonal psychology. He's a mind, body, and spirit relationship expert, wellness author, author of Love and Be Loved, Courage on Your Yellow Brick Road. He's a college professor. He's worked a lot with transpersonal psychology, which deals with altered states of consciousness and spirituality. And Dr. Tamiazzo has helped thousands of people live extraordinary lives. He's presented to colleges, corporations, hospitals throughout the U.S. And interestingly enough, he lives in a beautiful place called Sedona, Arizona, which I know is spiritual. Welcome, John.
Good morning.
So what's it like in Sedona? I've always wanted to visit there. Is it a nice place?
It's a beautiful place. Amazing red rocks that soar up in the sky.
Yeah, I heard about that stuff. Now, we use the word transpersonal psychology. We think of like spirituality, maybe dream research, and maybe even other stuff like that. Now, is there a place for spirituality in psychology? Because some people say psychology is empirical, it's research-based, and some of the stuff is maybe not as much. How do you answer that question?
Well, transpersonal psychology gets right to the root of the word psychology, which comes from psyche, which means soul.
Yes.
So it studies really the depths of our inner experience and our reason for being here, which is to make the world a better place and to open up to the realm of love.
That's excellent. But aren't there people that are skeptical, the hardcore researchers that, we can't really verify this with data, out-of-body experiences and all these other things. So how do you answer those people that are kind of skeptical?
Well, part of transpersonal psychology is mindfulness meditation, dream work. Those are all, you can study those easily, research those.
Yes.
The benefits of mindfulness meditation, the benefits of studying your dreams. You can look at the value of hypnosis, self-hypnosis. Those have all been studied quite deeply.
Yeah, of course, here at Love University, we do talk about loving yourself, others, and a higher nature. And for some, a higher nature could be God, a spiritual force, and things like that. Do you have a spiritual belief, John?
Oh, I do. I was raised a Catholic, but I don't really practice Catholicism anymore. But the root of it is really about love and compassion, which is a theme in all religions. My preference really is Buddhism.
Ah, interesting. Well, John, you're perfect for our show because we're all about love, right? Love University, this is what we talk about, and definitely the spiritual side of things. Now, one thing that we were talking about off air is that you actually studied under the great and famous Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who talked about the stages of grieving. She came up with stages of grieving, for example, denial, anger, and so forth. And there was a very interesting story you talked about that you said she worked in a hospital with very sick children, and there were 4 different wards. And one of the wards, the children were improving a lot, and she didn't know why, so she actually investigated. And she said that she found a cleaning lady who was holding and cuddling the kids and making them laugh and be happy, and that helped them heal. So that's an amazing thing, the power of touch. How do you see that happen, the power of touch?
Well, we all need that. I mean, we can't survive as a baby or a child without touch. It's absolutely fundamental to our health and wellness.
Definitely. And I guess people don't think about those things. Like I said, the love and the compassion are very powerful healing entities. So when even doctors and nurses now, they're trying to train them in these kind of elements. How to have more compassion in the hospital bed. And the other thing is, when we think about Kubler-Ross, we talk about grieving and dying, which for some people can be a negative thing. For other people, it can be transcendent. But how about this idea? Is there a stages of transcendence? Are there steps we can take to get to a higher place of love and happiness and actualization? What do you think about that?
You mean in this lifetime?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, without a doubt. I think that's probably the reason why we're here. I've had so many students, and I've had thousands of them, ask a question such as, why was I born to these particular parents? They seem so unfit to be parents.
Yes, that makes sense.
Because one of the questions I always ask, would you like to have a marriage or a relationship like your parents had? And most people say no.
Wow, this sounds pretty pessimistic, John. Well, why
Yeah,
is that?
doesn't it? Well, but I tell them, the reason you were born to your particular parents, whether they were parents that were excellent parents or maybe had some difficulty being parents, is to improve upon the life of each of them. That's your spiritual lesson here.
Ah,
So if your mother was very loving, like Francis of Assisi,
yes.
then that's something you want to develop more of in your life. But if your father
Right.
was not like Francis of Assisi,
Right.
then you want to develop in yourself as a say it's a man, a more loving expression in your life, different than your dad. So your dad taught you what not to do.
Yeah, I actually have a book coming out called Invincible You, and actually it does use Eastern and Western approaches. And I call it the reverse lesson. Learn in reverse what you don't want to do. Like if you see a hateful person, learn how to be loving, or a selfish person, learn how to be giving. So that's interesting. So you're thinking that that's coming from almost a pre-birth kind of idea, some kind of destiny in a sense, that we're brought together for our purpose.
Well, it could be looked at like that, but even looking at it from the basis of just our childhood, our parents basically did the best they can or could do with the resources they had, the knowledge they had at the time. And what we want to be able to do is to forgive them for their inabilities and to look for the lessons that were rich that we can take in and continue on with our life without blame. I think blame is kind of a waste of good energy.
Yeah, so John, so if we talk about stages of transcendence, let's say we have a person who's a so-called spiritual baby in terms of their inner development in life, psychologically and spiritually. What steps do they need to take? Would you say the first is to forgive your parents or forgive yourself? Or what are the stages you think they need to go through to get to the higher level of spiritual happiness?
Well, I always start with safety, protectiveness.
Yes.
That really is the most fundamental thing parents can provide a child is to be safe.
Kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The safety comes first.
Yes, exactly. I really love Abraham Maslow.
Yes.
And he's really considered as one of the first transpersonal psychologists.
Oh, wow.
Safety.
Yes.
And we might not have had that at home. And usually safety comes from play. It's the way our parents touched and played with us and with the consistency with which they did that. Because if they were consistent in providing safety for us, then we develop the next stage, which is trust. I think one follows the other.
Yes.
I can't tell you, Al, how many people I have met, probably just like you, who as adults still don't have those fundamental needs met of feeling safe and feeling trusting. So then to answer your question, we have to develop our own sense of safety. We have to find ways of creating safety in our own lives and to create trust in our own lives. And that comes from consistency also on our part.
Yeah.
We have a goal. We have something we want to do. We have something we want to achieve. And we look at ourselves, and if we follow through consistently, we slowly learn to trust ourselves. If we don't follow through and we have lots of goals that never are met, and we go through life kind of bumbling, then we don't develop we don't develop trust, and we also still don't develop safety.
Yeah, I really like that idea. The attachment from an early age, the secure attachment versus insecure, is a big issue. And then we think about, which is worse, a yelling parent or a cold parent? Which would you take, John, if you had to take one of the two?
I'd take a yelling parent because I had a yelling parent.
Really?
Raised in an Italian family.
Oh, okay. Italiano, come to dinner. You're running late, right? Eat, mange.
Yeah, everybody yelled over everybody else.
Yeah.
We had 5 of us in the house.
I come from a Latin background also. We had the same. So would they get mad at you if you didn't eat the food or something? What if you said, I'm not hungry? What would they say to you?
My mom would say, John, eat. But if I didn't really want to eat everything, she was fine with it.
Oh, okay. She didn't get too crazy.
No.
But the cold parent that doesn't really involve themselves and it's not affectionate, you think that's a lot tougher?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's come up many times in counseling work where we were talking about that the people feel all bottled up with their emotions. They can't express emotion.
Right.
And they says, well, I came from a family where we didn't express emotion. Everyone was kind of quiet.
Yes.
And I says, well, I just came from the opposite. And they says, I wish I would have had that.
Interesting. So, John, so this is good. So we're developing ourselves a little bit. Now we're no longer spiritual babies. Maybe we're spiritual teenagers. So we have safety and trust. What are the next stages to get to the higher level of self-actualization or happiness?
Well, even though we have safety and we have trust, we still are carrying some baggage, probably. It might be blame.
Right.
It might be anger. We didn't get all of our needs met.
Yes.
It might be shame. Maybe something happened in our family dynamics. Because these are all not clear-cut. Developing safety, developing trust. We still have issues that come up as we're growing up. So then our next step is to work on clearing away our baggage.
Right.
And hopefully we have a little carry-on bag.
Yes, definitely. Okay. So, that makes sense. Travel light. So basically go through therapy or spiritual healing practices or forgiveness.
However, we can bring resolution to that. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to still get angry. Sometimes anger can be a good thing. We don't want to stay there. We don't want to get stuck there.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I guess, you find some kind of special thing in your life that drives you, right? Some love or something. Would you say that's one of the upper stages of development?
Love?
Yes.
God, I would hope that would be what we got when we were growing up.
Yeah,
that's
ideally.
part of the safety. It's part of the trust.
Yes, exactly.
I think that how we learn really about love separate from our parents, we learn from our friends as we're growing up.
Yes.
We learn from all our other relatives. For example, I had a working family I came from. Both my mom and dad worked a lot. My mom worked during the day. And my dad worked at night. He was a jazz musician.
Oh, really? Wow.
So he was always off at clubs, smoky clubs, playing until 2 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles. Yeah. So their schedules were not in sync. And so his mother, Kate, was my grandmother, and she was a divinely loving person, just filled with love.
Yes.
She was born in Italy. And so I spent every summer with her and visited her as often as I could. She only lived about 2 blocks away. So I learned a lot about love from Kate.
I see. Yeah. So you have a great role. So a love role model is a good thing to have.
Yeah, and I think kids gravitate towards it. I think kids want to find love. They want to feel love. Yes. And if they don't find it at home, they're going to find it somewhere else.
Right. So it may not even be a parent. It could be a grandparent, maybe a mentor,
exactly.
a coach, a pastor, or a teacher, or something.
Could be our friend's parent.
Yeah, someone that believes in them.
Yeah.
So, John, I think talking about love. So I've written some books on love, compatibility, personality types, and relationships, and the idea of finding intimacy and love. And you actually have a book that's called Love and Be Loved, 8 Steps to Creating Intimacy and Love.
Yes.
And you talk about, you said the most crucial of human experiences is to be nurtured by the love of others and nurture others with the love deep within us. And then you even have another book, I think it's called The Wizard of Oz or something like that.
It's called Returning to the Land of Oz.
Yes. And you talk about the Tin Man, which I guess he's the one that lost his heart. And he says, the greatest loss is the loss of my heart. Before I was the happiest man on earth, but no one can love who has no heart. So tell us about those people that are listening to us right now who have lost love. Maybe they've been widowed, divorced. Maybe they've been through a betrayal in their relationships. They have a lot of emotional pain, and they don't know if they can love again. So how can people love again after going through the pain?
Well, you never want to get to a place where you say, I'm never going to trust love again. You don't want to get there.
Right.
I had the good fortune of teaching for Santa Barbara City College love and intimacy classes for many, many years. And so I had thousands of people come with just that question.
Yes.
How can I love again? How can I trust again? Can I trust opening my heart again? And I say, absolutely. But this time, maybe you have to ask more questions. Maybe you need to find out more about the person you're going out with. Maybe you need to find out what their childhood experiences were like and how much love they've experienced in their life and how they've dealt with loss of relationships. So you have a dialogue going on and you don't go barreling into a relationship just based on two people finding themselves attractive.
That makes sense. And with Love Types, the book I wrote, the bestseller, we talk about the Myers-Briggs personality type, which I know you know from Jungian's typology, and how basically people can be great people, but they're just not compatible. Some people are very structured, some are very spontaneous or introvert, extrovert. And if they don't appreciate and respect each other's style, then they can have a lot of conflicts and then unfortunately end up in separation and maybe divorce. So from the very beginning, you kind of want to take off that mask of the person to find out what they're really like, and also you take your mask off. So, and John, you've worked a lot with relationships. So what are the main reasons relationships fail? I think you talk about 4 reasons that they do fail.
Well, the first one is dishonesty. People just are not honest with people. And I was mentioning that this movie I just saw a few nights ago called Colette is about that. And so is A Star is Born that just came out. Those are great movies about relationships that don't work.
Is it the Barbara Streisand version, or is that a remake?
Yes, it's with Lady Gaga.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It's really well done. And then Colette is with Keira Knightley.
So what would be the takeaway from those movies? What happened there? They weren't honest?
What happened there is 2 of the principles. One is dishonesty, and which was evident in both those relationships. And in the relationships, both the male leads were dishonest about their addictions. In this case, in A Star Was Born, it was an addiction to alcohol and drugs. And he just thought he was okay, don't worry about it. But it was destroying the relationship.
Yes.
So that's one. Addictions can destroy relationships.
Right.
And we got a lot to back that up. Another one is just dishonesty. Like in the movie Colette, he was having affairs. And so she said, I can't be with you anymore because you're not honest with me. He says, I promise I will never do anything like that again. I'm so sorry. And she says, look at me and promise me. And he did, and he just kept on doing it anyway. So, and these themes come up a lot in relationships. Matter of fact, when you ask men and women in surveys, what's most important, honesty is like way, way up on top, if not number one. Yes. And not to have addictions to substances, alcohol, drugs, and things like that. So those are 2 major ones. Other ones are just not being able to really connect, not being able to express your feelings, being unable to tell somebody that you love them. That's another big thing, not being able to express your love. And another one is being too independent. You don't really need the other person, but it's more of a kind of a convenience maybe, or maybe you do want to have a relationship, or you do want to be married, but you have a lot of other things that are important to you that take way too much of your time. You might be over invested in your job. You might be over-invested in being with your friends. You might be over-invested in whatever hobbies you have. So these are 4 things out of probably more that don't allow relationships to flourish.
Yeah, actually, I like those conceptualizations, especially the last one. Now, when you talk about independence, there's like in the Eastern way, there's something called the middle path.
Exactly.
Where neither extreme is good. For example, someone who's very needy can be a detriment to a relationship. And someone who's very independent, also, they don't need the person. So the term interdependence is kind of a nice way to look at it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Is that, we need you a certain way, but also we have our own independence as well. So it's kind of a definite blend and a balance. And that's very healthy.
I think people need to have other things they're doing in their life that are important to them. So we need a nice balance between being with and also doing some things on our own.
Right. John, are you a martial artist at all? Have you ever studied any martial arts? Or
I haven't, no.
Okay, because
it sounds like you have.
Well, definitely, Aikido, and some of the martial arts do talk a lot about the East and Western, the middle ground and things like that, and having balance. So they're really interesting. Now, John, you also mentioned the steps to love. Now, I want to really get into these because these are very interesting. Maybe you can give me like a couple of snippets of wisdom here on each one, as I mentioned them to you. The first one, it says opening to love. What is that in a basic way?
Well, opening to love just means you make a decision. I want to have a life where I express love, receive love, and I have a partner in my life. I am open to love. I'm opening to it, and I
Yes.
am open to it. So then you have to take a look at, then we're back to square one. Where did we learn about love? And so that's the beginning.
Okay.
Then the next one is letting go,
Yes.
because letting go is just like one of the key pieces of life in general. There's all kinds of things we have to let go of, which includes certain beliefs, certain attitudes, certain things that we've learned that don't really help us to open to love. It might be maybe it might be family dynamics. It might be things that happen in relationships that we've had. Maybe we're holding on to resentment or blame or guilt or whatever it might be. But we have to learn about letting go of the things and the beliefs and the attitudes which are not conducive to love. I'll give you a simple example. Maybe isn't so simple, but it doesn't have to be about being married 4 times. But my neighbor in Santa Barbara came by one day and she said, John, I have a problem. And I says, well, what is it? Sit down. What's going on? She says, this man I met who I'm in love with wants to marry me. And I said, yes. And she says, well, that's it. That's the problem? Yes. Because I've been married 3 times.
Oh.
And my parents have said to me, encourage me, don't marry again. You don't know how to do it. You failed 3 times. And so what I had to do with her is reframe her 3 marriages so she could have the fourth.
Right.
Basically, what we worked on was, isn't it wonderful that you had 3 men who loved you enough that they wanted to marry you, and that you met 3 men that you loved enough that you wanted to marry them? Would you say that's true? She said, yes. I said, so you went into all 3 marriages with the intention of staying married, but for whatever reason, they didn't work. Is that correct? She said, yes. I says, well, now we got to take a look at what you learned from these 3 marriages. And so we worked on that. And so the fourth marriage then became a time in her life where she could take everything she learned from the 3,
Right.
let go of all the negativity that was directed at her by her parents about it and society, and just lovingly, openly, trustingly move forward and get married for the 4th time. Well, they've been married for 25 years.
Wow. That's great. The 4th time is a charm. It's like a lucky charm. Huh? That's great. And also the idea that you reframed her, I guess, negative into positive. I think you say you use that technique to look at the positive sides of things. You know, so it's not really 3 failures. It's like 3 learning experiences that made her better. I think
Exactly.
so that's wonderful. And then, but you also mentioned checking your baggage. Is that the same as letting go, like the anger and guilt, or is that something different?
No, that is the same. Letting go is checking your baggage, just like we do at the airport.
Okay. By the way, I told a story that my last couple of flights, they actually lost my baggage. And I don't know what happened, but they said, well, but now you can buy clothes. So I went on a shopping spree, and then they reimbursed me. So I thought, hey, this turned into a positive, right? It was negative.
Exactly. That's a good story you could share with your clients.
Yeah, I got rid of the old, and now I got some new clothes because of
So another step is learning to listen, and the importance of communication. So those 2 are essential.
Definitely.
Matter of fact, I would say I just did a love and intimacy workshop here at Yavapai College last Friday.
Right.
It was a 5-hour workshop, and most of the people in the class agreed that the biggest issue that in relationships that needs to be addressed is communication.
Yes.
People don't talk to each other, aren't open enough about what's going on with them. People don't listen well. I remember that Greek philosopher Epictetus, who said that's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we talk.
That's a good I think we can learn that. And speaking of that, you said something, listen to the right voice, which I take it like being intuitive or intuition. So I want to ask you, John, earlier I asked you if you did martial arts, but you asked me if you told me that I did it. So how did you know I'm a martial artist?
Because you asked me the question.
Okay, so did you feel an intuition that I was that, or did you kind of read that?
Yes, I thought the reason you would be asking me the question is because this is something that you really love,
I
and
see.
you were wondering if I did, because that would be a nice point of connection between us.
Yeah, so you sound like a very intuitive kind of guy. Are you intuitive, John?
I think intuition is probably a strong suit of mine. Yes,
I
exactly.
see. So the right voice is something that we feel inside us that tells us the right things. But why do people not listen to their right voice and they go the wrong way?
Well, the idea for the listening to the right voice came to me from a woman I met in Santa Barbara. Her name was Flavia. Flavia was a greeting card writer,
Yes.
and she had her own card company. It was the fourth largest in the United States. She used to be a writer for greeting cards with Hallmark,
Right.
but she didn't like the sentiment, so she created her own company. And so she told me a story about her Uncle Jack, who said to her that the most important lesson in life is to always listen to the right voice.
Ah.
And so she says, "What does that mean, Uncle Jack?" And he said, "When people are critical and they're demeaning and they say things that are nasty and you don't feel good by what they're saying, that's the wrong voice to listen to. When people are complimentary and they're soothing with their words and they're positive and upbeat and they're funny and you feel good with the conversation, that's the right voice to listen to."
Interesting. So we don't almost need like an emotional forgetting when we hear negativity, like kind of forget it immediately and then focus on the good positivity things.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of a challenge sometimes for people because we're kind of indoctrinated. The negativity stands out more because in evolutionary times, the animal coming at us, the danger is what catches our attention, not the beautiful flower on the road. So how do you get people to focus more on the beautiful flower instead of the dangerous so-called creature, the mental creature? Like
It's a matter of spending more time doing it. It's a habit that you have to develop. For example, I love taking walks. I love riding my bike. But when I'm taking walks, I even notice in the neighborhood, we live in this amazing beauty,
Yes.
and people are just staring at their telephones.
Yes.
They're not looking at anything around them. They're looking at their
Right.
phone.
You kidding me? Even in Sedona, I thought Sedona would be the one place where people are spiritually pure and natural. Is that not true? No,
It's beautiful. It's natural. But every place I've lived has been beautiful. I was raised on the California coast,
Right, of course.
which is beautiful also.
Right.
But I think one of the problems today, and we were addressing this in the love workshop on Friday at the college, is that yes, people are addicted to their telephones. Even when they sit down in a restaurant, you see couples immediately pull their phones out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so maybe the phone should go on a date by themselves and the people will stay home, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. That's crazy. So this is really great stuff. I mean, I really like the way you put this together. It's really like a psychological, spiritual kind of thing. For transcendence, right? Being the best you can be and being happy. And one of the things I like, I was reading, it says love is forgiving, which of course, forgiving yourself and others. And then just below that, it says love is forgiving. And I put the two together. Isn't it the same thing? Forgiving is really giving to yourself. You find peace. And also you forgive others and you give a gift to them, which is maybe compassion or something like that. How do you see that idea?
Well, I was playing with the word forgiveness when I wrote the chapter,
Yes.
and I was just putting a hyphen between the for and the giving. So love is for giving.
Forgiving.
And then, so in that sense, when we forgive, we also forgive ourselves.
Exactly.
And forgiving is really about what we're giving to ourselves and giving to others.
Okay.
So
you already thought about this before I did.
I love playing with words because words are interesting.
Definitely.
And then giving chapter is really about what is it that we give to ourselves and what do we give to others. And there was a quote in there that was from a set of books called A Course in Miracles, that all we give to ourselves. That's what the quote was. All we give to ourselves. So when I give you blame, then I'm giving myself blame. When I give you love, I'm giving myself love. So there's reciprocity there. It's give and take.
I like that. So you can catch things by the knife, by the blade, or by the handle. So something can hurt
Yes.
you, or maybe it can be something you can grow with. Now, the last step here, one of the steps, I think you talk about the chemistry of love. So when I hear the word chemistry, people often think, physical attraction, sexual attraction, someone who's attractive physically. Is that important to people? Do you have to find the physically attractive partner, or is there more than that in the chemistry of love?
Well, the chemistry of love has to do with the actual chemical reactions of what's going on when we actually just find someone else attractive.
Yes.
It's we're almost like walking pharmacies, and so I was doing some research on it, and even though it's been researched before, I did find this one study that was done from Stanford University that I just found very interesting, that some of these researchers that in the study really believe that falling in love is a chemical experience because of what goes on with the release of oxytocin and dopamine and other neurotransmitters that are released that are the feel-good hormones. And so that, though, doesn't necessarily mean that we're in love. It just means that we find somebody else attractive and there's something that we're having a response. But it doesn't necessarily mean we know the person yet. It doesn't mean they're the right person for us.
Well, yeah, because I'm thinking, what if you become a slave to your chemistry of love, where you fall for these people that are mean-spirited and really not very nice, and they hurt you? We hear about abusive partners that, in the beginning they're very charming and attractive, and they become very abusive. So how do we liberate people from, the pure chemistry, and also add the spiritual dimension, or the character of the person, their inner qualities? How do we teach people how to look beyond that so they can really be happy in a long-term relationship?
It's a learning experience. It comes from reading. It comes from talking. It comes from reading books, attending workshops. I think we have more resources available to us than any other time in our history about any subject we want to learn about. And if you want to learn about love, there's wonderful books out. There's classes that are offered. There's intensive workshops offered. I mean, the learning experiences are everywhere. So to answer your question, there's a lot of learning we have to still do.
True. But then again, breaking the habits. I have a friend, he keeps picking the same kind of woman he's attracted to, a certain type, but she's all wrong for him. She's a whole different personality type, and he's a certain spontaneous style. And he always breaks up with her. And then he's surprised. I said, well, you're not following your true compatibility. But it seems like he can't help himself. Now, there are other people out there like that. They keep picking the same, maybe physical type or a certain style. It's not really conducive to their happiness. So how do we get people to break that habit, the habit of choosing the wrong people?
I remember going to a workshop in Santa Barbara with Marianne Williamson.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
And she was asked that very question from a young lady in the audience.
Right.
And she says, you just have to be wiser and smarter and a little more on guard when you're meeting someone. And she says, well, how do I not get involved? She says, well, what you're going to do is you're going to find the person attractive. You're going to love that they find you attractive. But maybe this time you won't give him your phone number.
Well, that's not too bad, yeah. Yeah, you have to start somewhere, right?
Well, there's been cases of people who've gone. I knew a psychotherapist in Santa Barbara who, after many relationships, she decided she was going to take a break from men for 4 years and just go to India and go on spiritual retreats.
Right. Well, yeah, that's called Brahmacharya, the celibacy, spiritual celibacy.
So she did that for 4 years, and then she thought she was ready for a relationship, and she met a guy, and it turns out that he had all kinds of addictions.
Uh-oh.
And so she was asking me, how did this happen? Right. I was so clear about, I says, my sense is you really didn't get to know this guy enough. You just assumed that you were so clear and that everything now was going to work perfectly, which is a great thing to believe, but that's you. We don't know about him, what his belief is yet.
Yeah, I like
So
that. Yeah,
I think it
exactly.
goes back. We got to do more homework, more investigation of this person who we're interested in. We've got to hold back our emotions and really talk a lot more and ask a lot more questions.
Yeah, I'd say that love is a deep understanding of another, really getting to know them. But we actually have a interesting mixture that we do called the dating masquerade, where we actually have people wear masks and then they have their personality types and they get to know each other based on personality first. So it's a whole different way to look at it, kind of the inner to the outer, which is a reversal.
That sounds like a great masquerade
Yeah, it's a lot
party.
of fun, and also it really helps people, get into the compatibility factors. Now,
Uh-huh.
switching topics a little bit, and by the way, John, this has really been an amazing session. We're really going deep into a lot of things here, and we're having one of our longer sessions, which is great. There's a lot to talk about. And one thing you talk about also is living the extraordinary life. I think you said you've helped thousands of people do that. And you mentioned Maslow talked about healthy people instead of sick people, looking at, peak experiences, connecting with the higher power. And I read some of your biographies. You summarized some famous people that were very successful in life and also happy. And I took out little meanings from each of one of them. So I want to ask you what you think about this. One of them is, how do you want to be remembered or capture your meaning? And you talk about this guy named Alfred Nobel, a scientist who discovered basically dynamite. He became very wealthy. And then he said his brother died, and they put his name in the obituary by mistake, and they called him the Merchant of Death. And he felt so bad about that, he decided to change his life and founded the Nobel Prize, which is for great scientists in literary and humanity. Tell us about that. Why do you think that's so important? What do you want to be remembered by?
Well, Alfred Nobel was the richest person in the world at one time,
Wow.
and his intention was to discover some kind of an explosive to move waterways so people could water and irrigate their fields, and to help with mining so they could because they had they just had their picks and things, and so he thought an explosive would loosen things up, but he never thought about people using his dynamite on each other. It never dawned on him. So he had 20 factories in the world, and then, like you said, yes, in the early 1890s, his brother died, and they put his Alfred's obituary in the paper and called him the Merchant of Death for the thousands of people who died because of his invention, his discovery. And it made me realize, God, anybody can change the course of their life if they look back and say, what am I going to be remembered for?
Yes.
And in his case, he was going to be remembered as the Merchant of Death. He wanted to be remembered for something wonderful. So he then put all of his money into creating the Nobel Prizes, 5 prizes,
Yes.
including literature and history and science and medicine. And to that today, most people, other than you and I and now the people listening, know of Alfred Nobel being known for something quite different. But most of the world knows of Alfred Nobel being this wonderful person,
Yes.
and giving the most prestigious awards away. So I think the story really just has to do with, we can change the course of our life. We don't have to be stuck with our past.
Exactly. And you even say the phrase, move away from what haunts us. So I would think the regrets, say someone screwed up their life for many years in many different ways with people and career, but can they still redeem themselves?
Absolutely. I just have known hundreds of people who have done that, not just the Alfred Nobels, but
Yes.
people that I've had the honor of pleasure of working with, and the people who have come to classes, and the letters I've gotten in response. Matter of fact, there was a gentleman I met in a psychologist I met in Victoria, Canada. What a beautiful place that is, and he had a very challenging relationship with his dad, and his dad ridiculed him his whole life because he didn't become what his father wanted him to be. He became something different. And so at the moment of death, his dad had reached out to him to tell him how sorry he was. And instead of embracing his father, he moved away from his father because he wanted nothing to do with him. He hated his father.
Yes.
But it led him on a path in his life following his dad's death that wasn't fulfilling. And he was trying to trace with me, where did I go wrong? And he traced it himself when he went on an inner journey via hypnosis to that point in time. And so I asked him or suggested to him, you already know what has happened with you moving back. What if you moved forward in your imagination and you embraced your dad? And so he said, God, I don't know if I can do that, but he did it anyway, and it totally turned his life around.
Wow.
Because they had a conversation that they never had.
Yes.
But in his imagination, this conversation just came about. The words that he said to his father, the words his father said to him.
Yes.
So people can change dramatically.
Yeah, that's a great story. And speaking of imagination, one of our most imaginative creators, Walt Disney. You talk about him, who used to, a little kid, draw cartoons and things, and people really kind of made fun of him and didn't understand. But you said he followed his passion, and eventually, obviously, he became Walt Disney World and all that. But what if someone says to you, I don't have a passion, or my passion is collecting daisies or something. I can't make money from that. Collecting rocks in Sedona. So how do you answer that question? My passion, I don't really can make money from it.
You mean like, follow your bliss, that type
kind
of
stuff.
thing?
Yeah. So what do you say to people like that don't really believe in their ability to
we could always chunk it down. We could always say, what do you love? Like we do an exercise in the love workshops where people just sit and write and answer the question, I love, and they start writing all the things they love in their life. I love.
Right.
And they make a long list of the things they love. Now, I didn't tell them to make a long list. All I said was, just take about 10 minutes and following the words I love, just begin to write. Well, 10 minutes later, people were just writing so quickly. It was pouring out of them the things that they love. So then the next question becomes, let's take a look at how many of these things you were actually doing now.
Right.
That becomes the challenge. Because a lot of these things they love were things that they did when they were younger. Right. And then the next question is, well, why don't you do them now? So getting people just in the spirit of doing things that they love is a step to their passion.
That makes sense. But also, I do the same thing with my students or clients. And sometimes people say, I like this. But then, you have to really press them a little bit. But what do you really love? What is really your excitement? And I think that's an important thing, too, to kind of tune into that. And believe that you can actually develop that into something great that can help other people, helps humanity, help yourself. And for some people, maybe it's just being a great parent, a great friend, a great lover, or whatever it is. So something that just, brings positivity to the world. And that could be the idea.
Well, most people on their list, they always seem to put down things and experiences of nature. People are drawn to nature. Yes. I mean, typically, if you ask a person to close their eyes and to take themselves to a very special, safe, and lovely place, a place where they can be deeply relaxed,
Sedona, Arizona,
always go to nature.
Yeah, it comes to you guys. See, we're out here in LA, which is all full of smog and traffic.
Well, what state do you live in?
We're in California, Los Angeles area.
Okay. I was raised in that area.
Yeah. So, but definitely, we're a little bit jealous out here that you have that beautiful nature. So,
well, you've got the beach.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, we can. Exactly. And finally, John, the idea of love. Now, you mentioned this great artist who some people thought had mental illness, Van Gogh, and you said that he really talked a lot about love. He said the best way to love God is to love many things: a friend, a spouse, whatever you like. Always try to go deeper and learn more. And the idea of finding love everywhere, is that possible for people? Is that something people should do?
Finding love in lots of different places? Absolutely. Yes. That's what the love list is about. Because a love list is not just about people.
Yes.
It's about all different aspects of life that you love. Because I think we have a narrow view that love is just what goes on between me and a significant other, but it's much bigger than that. Leo Buscaglia shared that. Matter of fact, he was more of my inspiration for writing a book about love.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy. Did you study with him at USC, or did you read his
No, I we used to watch him on his PBS specials, and then he came to Santa Barbara, and I went to his class there and read his book on love. Here's a guy who's just filled with love, who loved hugging
Yes,
people.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Do you remember the guy, Roberto? I think Roberto Benigni, one of your countrymen. He won the Academy Award
Yes.
for A Beautiful Life, and he said, "I want to make love to the world." Do you remember that? People thought he was crazy. How can you do that? That's
Well,
kind of
you asked a question about Vincent van Gogh, and just quickly, when I was reading the letters that he wrote to his brother Theo, because the book is called Dear Theo,
yes,
and it's all about the relationship that these two brothers had formed. Theo owned an art gallery in Amsterdam,
yes,
and he had his brother's art there, but never sold it. Oh, I should no, go back. He did sell one, but late in his life. So when I was reading about Vincent van Gogh early in the book, with the letters,
yes.
he had an absolute love of life. He was engaged with the flowers and the trees and nature, and he found people interesting. He began to learn to sketch. But what happened to Vincent van Gogh was that he had a passion for art, and he only sold one painting in his life, but he had already given up at that point because he was close to his death.
Yes.
And I wondered, what would it be like to be a businessman, but you never ever get hired for a job, and you never get to work in a business? Or how about if you're a real estate agent and you never sell a piece of property?
Right.
Or how about if you're a psychotherapist and you study all these years and no one ever comes to see you?
Exactly. That's great. Well, I guess you can psychoanalyze yourself,
through.
but then you would be a terrible patient, I guess. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But he never, I mean, he didn't give up. You said he till the very end, he still created art.
Oh, he painted, I think, around 900 to 1,000 paintings, something like that.
I'm sure there were millions, today, right? People really loved his work today.
Yeah, his paintings bring in more money than any other paintings in the world. Yeah. And his sister-in-law, Theo's wife, is the one who, when Theo died and Van Gogh died, and they died within months of each other, she took up all of Vincent's art and brought it out to the world with big shows, and she brought prominence to him, recognition to her brother-in-law.
Definitely, yeah. We all need a good sister-in-law or something, or a sister to help us. But that's amazing. So, John, this has been an incredible session today. I really appreciate you being here, giving us kind of like a higher level of wisdom, because we often get psychologists and others on here who are a little more scientific and different styles. But you kind of combine a lot of different things: the spiritual, the psychological, the emotional. And I guess the takeaway from today was, I guess, believe in your passion, love everywhere, and move to Sedona, Arizona, or at least visit there, right?
Or any coastal place in California.
Yeah, any beautiful nature place, at least for a little bit. I call it a spiritual vacation. Like spiritually, take a day or a week or something, go to nature and kind of meditate or something, and commune with the higher nature. Can be beautiful. Now, John, where can we hear more about you? And tell me, do you have any special projects, or do you do coaching or anything like that, or what is your
Well, I do counseling by phone because I do have some clients who live in other places. One, some in Canada, and people who I met there when I was teaching in Canada.
Yes.
But I taught there a lot over a 20-year period. Okay. So people call by phone, and we do some counseling work with them on the telephone. So I do that.
Excellent.
And I do have my website that people can go check out when I'm going to do workshops and things.
What is that?
And the other thing is that I'm invited. I've spent a lot of my life invited by people to come and offer a workshop where they live. So I've traveled. So they set up a workshop, and I give them some a percentage and they come to the workshop for free. And that's how I live my life.
I see. So you do a lot of workshops in different places. Well, we definitely would love to maybe have you come out here to California. Maybe we can do something together.
Sure.
Or I can come out there. I mean, one of my bucket lists actually is to go to Sedona. I've never been there.
No.
So I'm very excited. Maybe I can see you out there.
Sure.
And you can give me the tour of the Red Rocks and all that stuff and whatever's out there.
Well, all you have to do with the Red Rocks is you walk out my front door and you're surrounded by them.
Okay. Is there a cactus juice? What's the favorite drink out there in Sedona?
It seems like right now the favorite drink in Sedona is wine because
Oh, really?
the this area is trying to compete with the California wine
Cheers.
industry.
Wow.
They're never going to compete with the California wine industry.
Oh, okay.
Like people here say, "What's your favorite Arizona wine?" And I say,
Cactus
"Well,
wine.
you're talking to the wrong person.
Oh,
I
okay.
come from wine regions in
Ah,
California,
I see.
and I
What
don't
wine
like."
tasting? Do they have wine tasting like in the usual places out here?
Yes, they
Same
have
thing?
wine tasting here.
Wow.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot of fun. So we're actually going to increase tourism by 10%, I think, after the show. So,
Well, you know how many people visit Sedona every year is around 3 million.
wow, that's incredible. Well, John, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And again,
Thank you so
we
much.
would love to have you back again. And tell us your website one more time.
It's just johntamiazzo.com. JOHN, then Tamiazzo, TAMIAZZO.com.
Perfect. So again, this is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and it's been a great show today. If you have any questions or comments about today's show, if you want to be a guest, please write to us at lovetype4u@aol.com. That's LOVETYPE, the number 4, letter U at AOL.com. Also come to loveuniversity.love, our website. We have a lot of interesting blogs, and we actually tie it into the different show topics. Also, we're on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, and all the other good stuff. So everyone now, please put away your notepads, your pens, your pencils. Meditate a little bit, go out into nature, walk around and smell the deep, beautiful air, and enjoy more love. Class is dismissed.